hard to capture, extravagant, resurrect the track and it's militant. And I react like a convict and start killing. It's manifesting. The gods work like appliances, dealing in my sacred life.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explained here, bringing you guys another discussion for Boruto Chapter 46. And for the anime-only fans, I highly recommend clicking off of the chapter discussion, because this is going to be a major bombshell, and to give you an idea of how big of a bombshell this would be. This would be roughly the equivalent of somebody telling you guys like, hey, you know, Pain's gonna blow up Konoha and he's going to kill Kakashi, he's gonna kill Shizune, and Tsunade is gonna be MIA. I know Shizune and Kakashi were brought back to life, but at the time we didn't know that. So this is roughly that type of a spoiler on this. Now, but with that being said, if you're still here, I'm gonna assume you're okay with talking about spoilers. So in this last Boruto chapter, you know, we got that revelation that a lot of people have been talking about, and it's the one thing that really hammers home the seriousness of the situation for me, which is the fact that Momoshiki, using that karma seal, is gonna take over Boruto's body completely. Now, in the past, I did compare it to like a Jinchuriki, where in Otsutsuki, once they are able to gain control, they'll end up taking over the body, just how it was described, where if the Jinchuriki loses that Biju tug of war, that the Biju can take over their body and get free and basically get unleashed. But I didn't think it would get to the point of completely taking over and rebirthing the Otsutsuki. And so, you know, I made the conversation, you guys should have seen this a few days ago, I made the conversation about whether or not Naruto will make the cold and calculated decision to actually sacrifice his son, potentially with the way to try and bring him back after the fact. But, you know, now I think we need to have the very serious conversation about whether or not Momoshiki is going to succeed in taking over Boruto's body. And if you guys read the chapter, you know what exactly this entails. So essentially, when Momoshiki takes over his body, the karma seal, the first sign that this is happening, the karma seal is going to spread all the way down Boruto's body, from the top of his head all the way down to his legs, okay, down to his toes and all that. He's going to have some of Momoshiki's features, and then over the course of time, Momoshiki is going to completely overwrite Boruto. His DNA is going to become 100% Otsutsuki, and Momoshiki is going to be reborn. And because Boruto's his new vessel, and because it's about the transference of power, you have to assume that any power that Boruto has as well is going to be passed on to Momoshiki. And so when you start looking at this, Momoshiki could be getting reborn into a body that is better equipped, a body that can produce chakra, and so in theory a body that is going to be more powerful than it was before. Yes, Momoshiki was able to use Rinnegan abilities, he was able to create a different chakra type of attacks and everything as far as with his weapons and all that, but you know, there's a bit of a difference in how human beings use chakra and how the Otsutsuki are using them. I think they've hammered that home enough. And so I think that when you look at the upgrades that he would be getting from taking over the body of a descendant of the Sage of Six Paths and a descendant of Hamura, and you have those two bloodlines in there, and you look at what Tsunade potentially did to Boruto by giving him the Jogan. When you look at all these different things, Momoshiki has an ability to where, or an option to where, his abilities are going to be heightened, and so that makes Momoshiki a more dangerous villain. I don't necessarily think that they're going to be building towards this long game to where Momoshiki is introduced as the first villain of the series, and he also ends up being the final villain of the series. Like other shows have done that, to where you think the threat is done and then the threat resurfaces at the end. I think that if they do that, this would be good enough writing, because it would come down to Naruto having to make the decision, is the only way of saving his son actually killing him. But I think that the option of Momoshiki taking over Boruto's body, I think that this would be some very intriguing writing, because now all of a sudden things are no longer black and white, and it would give Kodachi the opportunity to where, you know, when it comes to playing with themes, when it comes to character reactions and everything, he can muck everything up, because it gives him an opportunity to dirty up the story and potentially get characters to act in ways that they wouldn't normally act, because this is such a traumatic event that's going on. This is so major, and so now it gives you an opportunity to start rewriting some of the characters' personalities, to where you can start reshaping them to fit the mold of the story. story, and it won't necessarily be one of those things to where it feels out of character because they're acting in a way to where they're responding to actually losing their friend in Boruto. So I think that from a narrative perspective, that can actually work. Now, when it comes to Boruto, I think that if you take this route to where Momoshiki takes over Boruto's body and is able to act independently for a while, I think you have to be very careful. I think you have to build in a way to actually save Boruto at the end. But you know what I want to address now, I know there's gonna be somebody right now in the comment section like, yo, how can you even say is Momoshiki going to completely erase Boruto's existence? You're so stupid. Didn't you see the flash forward sequence? Didn't you already see that Boruto's fighting Kawaki? So I'm gonna tell you for a second to pump the brakes, and I want you to think for a second, okay? Do we have anything that confirms that Boruto versus Kawaki is the final fight in the series? No, we don't. In fact, when you look at some of the stuff that Ikimoto said in the past, the whole purpose of this story now is to build up towards what causes the rift with Boruto and Kawaki, and you're gonna have the fallout of what happens with Boruto and Kawaki after the fact. That's just the natural progression of storytelling. I highly doubt that that is the final fight of the series, because if you have Boruto versus Kawaki in Konoha with that scene right there be your final fight, that is highly anticlimactic. I don't think that's the route they're going. But the fact of the matter is that there was no timetable that was actually given that Boruto will have Momoshiki take over his body. There's no timetable. Boruto still has the karma seal at that point, which means that the threat of Momoshiki is still lingering, which means that Momoshiki has not completely taken over his body. Boruto has some control over the karma seal at that point. He's able to activate it at will. He's able to activate his Jogan at will. But the fact of the matter is that we don't know if that's the final fight, nor do we know if that's a midway point in the series. Neither was stated. That's the whole purpose of a flash forward when it comes to storytelling. You put that in there to grab the attention, to build up the suspense, and then you go into the past and you build up to that moment, and then typically once you get to that, stories tend to progress past that point. So the threat of Momoshiki potentially taking his body, that still lingers to a certain extent. Again, you have to think outside the box for a little bit, but I think that if you have that moment right there to where the threat of Momoshiki taking over Boruto's body is still lingering, now it makes you look at what's going on with Kawaki's motivations a little bit different. I don't think that that's necessarily why they're fighting, but it would make sense if Kodachi uses that as a way to try and build up tension. So I think that that is something that could work, because they're clearly building up some type of a dynamic between Ishiki and Momoshiki. I think that there's going to be some revelation that's going to connect these two later on in the future, and I think that it's very telling that Boruto, the other person who's been turned into a vessel, is somebody that Boruto considers to be a brother. I think that that is telling. I think that that's symbolism that's being set up in some type of a way. We've already gotten part of Ishiki's origin story. Now we need to see how everything connects back with Kaguya and how everything connects back with Momoshiki. We saw part of it, but there's still some gaps in it. So it's gonna be interesting to see what exactly the relationship between Momoshiki and Ishiki is, and how that parallels with Boruto and Kawaki, and if we have a situation where Momoshiki takes over Boruto's body, whether or not there's a way to actually reverse that. Amado said that it's irreversible, but at the same time, it's irreversible as of now. That means that as of now, Amado doesn't know a way to actually reverse that. That doesn't necessarily mean there's not an answer out there yet. That just means they haven't actually discovered it. So I want to know from you guys, how do you guys feel about that possibility of Boruto having his body taken over by Momoshiki? Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.